Imagine trying to fly a massive passenger jet in a place where the very air refuses to cooperate, where engines struggle to breathe, wings fight to generate lift, and every meter of runway becomes a battle against physics itself. In most parts of the world, aviation follows predictable rules. Planes take off, climb smoothly into stable air, and land on carefully engineered runways designed around decades of aerodynamic understanding. But there are places on Earth where those rules begin to break down, where geography pushes aircraft technology to its absolute limits. And yet, in one of those places, China decided to build an airport anyway. An airport where, by all conventional logic, planes weren't supposed to fly. To understand why this project was so extraordinary, you first have to understand the environment it was built in. This region sits in a landscape shaped by extreme terrain, towering mountains, unstable weather patterns, and atmospheric conditions that make aviation dramatically more dangerous than usual. For centuries, this area remained isolated, not because people didn't want to reach it, but because nature made access painfully slow and unpredictable. Before the airport existed, traveling into this region could take days. Roads twisted through steep terrain, vulnerable to landslides, heavy storms, and seasonal closures. A journey that looked short on a map could become an exhausting expedition in reality. For local communities, this isolation wasn't just inconvenient. It limited economic growth, medical access, trade opportunities, and tourism potential. From a strategic perspective, the solution seemed obvious. Build an airport and connect the region directly to major cities. But there was one problem. The environment itself fought against aviation. At the heart of the challenge was a simple but powerful factor: air behavior. Aircraft rely on air density to function efficiently. Wings generate lift by pushing against air molecules, and engines create thrust by compressing and igniting air mixed with fuel. When conditions disrupt this balance, performance drops dramatically. In certain extreme environments, air behaves differently enough that aircraft performance changes in ways pilots must carefully compensate for. Engines can produce less thrust than expected. Wings require higher speeds to generate the same lift, and the margin for error shrinks. This creates what engineers sometimes call a performance penalty. Everything becomes harder. Takeoff requires more distance. Climb rates decrease. Landing speeds increase, and operational flexibility disappears. Imagine trying to sprint while breathing through a narrow straw. Your muscles still work, but your body struggles to deliver oxygen efficiently. That's similar to what aircraft experience when operating in challenging atmospheric conditions. Because of this, building an airport here wasn't just about pouring concrete and installing navigation systems. It required rethinking how planes would operate from the ground up. One of the first major issues was runway length. In environments where aircraft performance is reduced, planes need significantly more distance to accelerate safely before takeoff. The difference can be dramatic. A runway that works perfectly in one location may be completely inadequate somewhere else. Engineers had to design infrastructure that compensated for these limitations, ensuring aircraft could reach safe speeds even under reduced performance conditions. That meant longer runways, reinforced surfaces, and strict operational planning. But takeoff was only half the equation. Landing presented its own dangers. When aircraft approach the runway, they rely on aerodynamic drag and engine control to slow down. But in challenging environments, that process changes. Planes may approach faster than usual, requiring greater braking force after touchdown. Tires, brakes, and thrust reversers all experience increased stress. This creates a narrow safety window. If anything goes wrong, delayed braking, reduced friction, or unexpected wind shifts, the consequences escalate quickly. Then there was the issue of aircraft weight. Every kilogram matters when performance margins shrink. Airlines operating in demanding environments often have to limit passengers, cargo, or fuel to maintain safe operating conditions. That means flights may carry fewer people than the aircraft was designed for, simply to reduce risk. From an economic standpoint, this adds another layer of complexity. An airport that costs hundreds of millions of dollars to build must still remain financially viable while operating under these constraints. Navigation also becomes more complicated. Terrain in extreme regions can interfere with standard flight paths. Mountains, weather systems, and atmospheric instability force pilots to follow precise routes that leave little room for deviation. Unlike airports and flat landscapes, where aircraft can approach from multiple directions, challenging environments often create narrow corridors of safe entry. Pilots must execute approaches with absolute precision. Technology helps. Advanced avionics, navigation systems, and real-time monitoring. But ultimately, human skill remains critical. Every approach becomes a carefully calculated sequence of decisions, balancing aircraft performance against environmental conditions. And all of this only describes the challenge of flying there. Building the airport itself was an entirely different battle. Construction teams faced terrain that resisted heavy machinery, weather that could halt progress overnight, and conditions that pushed workers to their physical limits. Equipment had to operate reliably in an environment that strained mechanical systems. Materials had to withstand temperature fluctuations and environmental stress. What emerged from this effort wasn't just a transportation hub. It was a statement, a declaration that modern engineering could overcome geography. China's decision to build this airport wasn't purely about convenience or tourism. It was also about regional integration, economic expansion, and technological demonstration. Infrastructure projects like this reshape entire areas, connecting remote regions to national markets, accelerating development, and transforming local economies. But ambition always comes with risk, because when you build in a place where nature resists you, every success requires constant vigilance. Maintenance becomes more demanding. Operations require stricter procedures. Safety margins must be protected relentlessly. This airport stands as proof that humans can push technology into environments once considered unreachable. But it also raises a deeper question. If flying here is already so difficult, how did engineers manage to construct the entire facility in the first place? Because the real story isn't just about planes operating where they shouldn't. It's about how humans built an airport in a place that seemed determined to stop them. If operating aircraft in this environment pushes technology to its limits, building the airport there was an even greater challenge. A full-scale confrontation between engineering ambition and natural forces. Construction began with a harsh realization. The terrain itself didn't want to cooperate. The ground conditions were unpredictable. The weather could change within hours, and heavy machinery faced constant strain. Equipment that performed perfectly in normal environments suddenly struggled under these extreme conditions. Engines overheated or lost efficiency, hydraulic systems behaved unpredictably, and maintenance demands increased dramatically. Engineers had to adapt quickly. Specialized machinery was brought in, modified to function reliably despite environmental stress. Construction schedules were redesigned around narrow weather windows. Crews worked in rotating shifts to maintain progress without exhausting workers. Every day became a logistical puzzle, balancing human endurance, equipment limitations, and environmental uncertainty. Then came the runway. A runway might look like a simple strip of concrete, but in reality, it is one of the most precisely engineered surfaces in aviation. It must support enormous weight, tolerate temperature expansion and contraction, resist environmental wear, and maintain friction properties under varying conditions. In this environment, those requirements became even more demanding. Materials had to be carefully selected to withstand thermal stress and structural fatigue. Engineers implemented reinforcement strategies to ensure long-term durability, knowing that maintenance access could be more complicated than at airports in easier locations. Precision surveying ensured the surface remained perfectly aligned, because even minor deviations could create safety risks during high-speed takeoffs and landings. At the same time, construction crews themselves faced physical challenges. Working long hours in demanding environmental conditions can cause fatigue, dehydration, and reduced concentration. Safety protocols became critical. Medical teams monitored workers, rest cycles were enforced, and support systems were established to maintain productivity without compromising health. Despite these obstacles, progress moved forward at remarkable speed. What emerged was not just a runway, but an entire aviation ecosystem. Terminals, navigation systems, fuel infrastructure, emergency services, and operational facilities, all designed to function reliably in a location that constantly tested their limits. The terminal itself became another engineering puzzle. Airports are more than transportation hubs. They are environments designed for human comfort and efficiency. But when external conditions create stress on the human body, architecture must adapt. Designers focused on minimizing passenger fatigue and confusion. Walking distances were optimized. Interior layouts were simplified. Lighting was carefully planned to maintain clarity and orientation. Materials were chosen for durability and thermal performance, ensuring stable indoor conditions despite external fluctuations. Behind the visible design were complex environmental systems. Climate control had to maintain comfortable temperatures while operating efficiently. Structural components had to handle environmental loads over long periods. Safety systems were enhanced to respond quickly to emergencies because remote locations can delay outside assistance. The result was a facility that functioned almost like a protective shell, a controlled environment separating passengers from the harsher realities outside. But the story doesn't end with construction. Operating flights into this airport requires pilots with specialized training and experience. Standard procedures often need adjustment to account for environmental factors. Flight crews must carefully calculate performance margins before departure, considering aircraft weight, weather conditions, and fuel requirements. Timing also matters. Certain periods of the day may offer more stable conditions, while others increase risk due to changing winds or visibility. Airlines schedule operations accordingly, reducing exposure to unpredictable variables. Every flight becomes a carefully managed operation rather than a routine trip. Navigation requires precision. Approach paths may be constrained by terrain or environmental factors, forcing pilots to follow strict profiles during descent. Modern avionics assist with guidance, but human judgment remains essential. Pilots must constantly evaluate aircraft performance and environmental feedback, ready to respond instantly if conditions change. This combination of technology and human skill transforms each landing into a demonstration of coordination and expertise. Beyond aviation, the airport's impact on the region has been profound. Travel times that once took days can now be completed in hours. Tourism increases as accessibility improves. Businesses gain new opportunities. Medical transport becomes faster. Local economies begin to grow in ways previously impossible due to isolation. Infrastructure often acts as a catalyst for transformation, but growth also introduces new pressures. Environmental systems that remained relatively undisturbed for generations may face increased strain from higher human activity. Development can alter landscapes, affect wildlife patterns, and challenge local resource management. Communities must balance economic opportunity with environmental preservation. This tension exists in many major infrastructure projects. The promise of progress alongside the responsibility of sustainability. In the end, this airport represents more than a transportation facility. It is a symbol, a demonstration of what happens when engineering refuses to accept natural limitations as permanent barriers. Humans have always pushed into difficult environments, mountains, deserts, oceans, and even space, expanding the boundaries of what is possible. Airports like this one redefine geographic reality. They shrink distances, connect isolated regions, and reshape economic landscapes. They prove that technology can adapt to environments once considered inaccessible. But they also remind us of something important. Nature never truly stops resisting. Every successful operation here depends on continuous maintenance, careful planning, and respect for environmental forces. The balance between human ambition and natural constraints remains delicate, and perhaps that is what makes this airport so remarkable. It isn't just a place where planes land. It's a place where human determination meets the limits of physics and, at least for now, manages to win. Because sometimes progress means building gateways in places the world once believed were unreachable, and proving that even where planes aren't supposed to fly, humans will find a way.